Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the UAGC Women of STEM presents the Millennium Leaders Changing the Aviation Industry. Thank you all for attending, and we greatly appreciate it. I am Siobhan Andrews, the student president of the University of Arizona Global Campus Women in STEM organization. As an information technology student here, I am thrilled to say the UAGC Women in STEM is a student-led organization that focuses on STEM careers for women. Our club includes the UAGC Women in Technology International Chapter, better known as WITI, and the UAGC chapter of the Girls Who Code College Loop. Now, last year we focused on aviation pioneers that paved the way for our future leaders to make the changes they've made today. So today we're going to focus and hear on those several leaders that are innovative in our world today. We have an exciting show for you and a question and answer section at the end. So feel free to fire away with your questions and comments. But while we're talking about future leaders, I would also like to show my appreciation for the women of STEM. It has been a remarkable first year with all of you, and the knowledge, mentorship, kindness, and sense of family you all have provided for me have been the greatest, but I must pass my baton. I would like to welcome our next president of the Women of STEM, Ms. Jada Alexander. And again, thank you for joining us today. And I'm going to pass the baton over to Dr. Ivy and Captain Willie Daniels.
Thank you, Siobhan. Hello, everyone. We are so excited to have our panelists joining us today. We have a group of millennial leaders who are outstanding in their involvement in the aviation industry, and they are going to share some insights on how they did it, their success, and how you, if interested in a career in aviation, can also walk a similar walk as they have done. I'd like to say on behalf of the University of Arizona Global Campus, we want to say thank you to all of our panelists for joining us today and sharing your insights. There are a couple of stats that I'd like to share regarding the aviation industry, just to whet the appetite a little bit as we get rolling. The FAA mentioned very recently in a survey and a report that they provided that there is still a shortage in aviation resources. That includes pilots, that includes other positions within the aviation industry, engineers, all types, analysts, all types of positions. So when we think about the shortage that we're seeing specifically with pilots, well, that's occurring for a couple of reasons. We have several pilots who are retiring right now, and because of that retirement of our seasoned pilots, that opens up a whole line of open positions that we need to fill going into the aviation industry. And another direction, there is an increasing demand in air travel. Just think about how often pre-COVID and now picking up now, considering COVID, how often you travel. When we think of travel commercially, when we think of travel by organizations, military travel, the full works, all of that is leading to a shortage of pilots. So I want to share a few statistics with you just to hold on to as our millennial leaders in aviation share their stories. 80,000 airline pilots are retiring. 80,000, that's a lot, over the next 20 years. United Airlines alone estimates that half of their 12,500 pilots will retire over the next 10 years, and they will need to hire 10,000 pilots over that period just to keep pace with their growth. And one more stat, American Airlines has a similar projection with 7,200 of their 15,000 pilots set to retire over the next decade. So as we get into the exciting portion of today, listening to our young aviation leaders, just think about the exciting opportunities that exist in the aviation industry. It could have your name on it. So without any further hesitation, I'd like to switch the floor back over to Ms. Carrie Seuss, who's going to introduce to you our fantastic millennial leaders of today in aviation. Carrie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Ivy. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carrie Seuss, your current UAGC Women in STEM Vice President. It's my pleasure to introduce you to our four amazing millennial panelists. Their love of flying started at a young age, and their achievements to get where they are today is an inspiration to an old Gen Xer like me. Our first speaker will be Mark Reese, and is currently a first officer for Endeavor Air, which is a regional carrier flying for Delta Airlines. He earned a private pilot certificate in high school and then attended the Ohio State University, majoring in aviation with a professional flight specialization. Speaking of Ohio State, Mark established a $1,000 a year scholarship for aviation students at his alma mater. He volunteers with the next generation of aviators with Our Shades of Blue, as well as the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals and the Buckeye Tigers. Welcome, Mark. Our second speaker, Tevin Williamson, born and raised in Newark, Delaware, is a first officer with United Airlines. He flew his first plane at 16 and immediately fell in love with flying. Soon after, Tevin enrolled in the aviation program at Delaware State University, earning a bachelor's degree in airways science in 2017. In that same year, he began flying for Republic Airways, and now, as mentioned earlier, is a first officer at United, where he flies the Airbus 320. Thank you for joining us, Tevin. Our third speaker, Chameron Chase, a Charlotte, North Carolina native, graduated in 2017 with a bachelor's in aviation from Delaware State University with honors. During his time at Delaware State, he was also a flight instructor, helping other students excel in flight training, and in 2016 worked at the United Airlines as a flight operations intern. Chameron is currently a first officer for United Airlines, and prior to that, he spent 4 years as a captain at Piedmont Airlines. Chameron uses his compassion and positive attitude today to help encourage others to work hard and succeed in their own endeavors. Please say hello to Chameron Chase. Our fourth speaker, David Linscheid, he's actually en route, so I'm sure he will be here as soon as it's his turn and as we move forward. Is a graduate of Western Michigan University College of Aviation and currently a pilot at United Airlines flying the Airbus A320 out of Chicago O'Hare. As one that lives near O'Hare and under a flight path, I am sure he has flown over my house many a time. He currently resides in St. Joseph, Michigan, which is a small town on the shores of Lake Michigan. In his sophomore year of high school, David met Captain Willie Daniels, where he learned about the organization Shades of Blue. Captain Daniels then mentored and guided him on the path he leads today. After graduating college, he moved to Guam, conducting sightseeing tours in a small single-engine plane. He then flew for United Express, eventually landing at United Airlines. Welcome, David, and again, give a warm welcome to all of our esteemed panelists as I pass the mic over to our first speaker, Mark Reese.
Hello, my name is Mark Reese, and I'm currently a first officer at Endeavor Air. We currently fly for Delta Airlines, as we talked about, and essentially, I got into aviation when I was just about 8 years old. When I grew up in Denver, Colorado, you couldn't really drive too many places besides the mountains, so what I would do is we'd have to go fly to DC to go see my grandma, and I soon kind of became really more interested in the flying than kind of the vacation to go see my grandma. So I, would always tell my mom, I want to go see airplanes, all these different things. And finally, when I was 8 years old, I met Captain Willie Daniels at a banquet for the Tuskegee Airmen. And he said, hey, you're interested in aviation. I had all these questions for him. He said, I think you're really interested. Maybe I'll take you up in my airplane. And he had a small airplane out at a local airfield. And I think he took me up maybe 3 or 4 months later. And he let me fly for about 3 minutes. And as an 8-year-old, I could barely even see over the seat, and I had to have a booster seat. But it was absolutely amazing. It was the best, 20 minutes of my life. I just couldn't imagine doing anything else. And since I've been 8 years old, I've wanted to be a pilot. So over that time, from being 8 to now 27, I really tried to foster aviation throughout my world and my career. So I tried to make sure that I got the best grades, made sure that I, was going to be good at math and science, all these things that I thought pilots needed to know. So I made sure that I took all the hardest classes in high school, all these different things. I tried to always put myself in a position to succeed because I knew that I wanted to be a pilot. So graduating high school in about 2013, the economy wasn't the best. It wasn't as good as it was just pre-COVID. So, and pilots still weren't making a lot of money. So I knew that I wanted to be in aviation, but I knew it was going to cost a lot of money. So I essentially applied for any scholarship I could. And this was really, really tough, but it got easy at the end. And essentially, I was able to get my solo flight. So when you fly an airplane by yourself for the first time, funded by the Tuskegee Airmen, in accordance with another United Airlines pilot as well. And then I was able to get some other scholarships to pay for some more flight training. And this is all while I was in high school. So I would fly after school, I would fly on the weekends, and I would fly over the summers. So it was really cool to kind of see your friends go off to summer jobs, and I was going out to the airport to go fly an airplane. And finally, I kind of convinced my parents, like, hey, I was pretty serious about this. So they agreed to pay the last couple $1,000s for me to get my private pilot's license. And in this time, I was trying to decide whether or not I wanted to go to the military to be a pilot, because I knew that paying for aviation was going to be really difficult. So I knew I could go to the military, or I could go the commercial and civilian route, which is going to regular school. And so I applied to all the military academies, the Air Force Academy, the Naval Academy, and I thought I was really going to be an Air Force or Navy pilot. But unfortunately, not the best runner. I don't really like exercising or getting yelled at or all those things that you kind of associate with the military. So I ended up going to Ohio State University, where I received a full scholarship. And that was able to pay for all of my tuition and books and all that stuff in my room and board. But it still didn't pay for all of my flight training, which is about $60,000 on top of my degree. So I continued volunteering with organizations and continued applying to scholarships. And after 4 years of school, I was able to get just about 90% of it paid for through scholarships. And if anyone has any questions on how to do that, please let me know. I can talk about that for days. So I finished up my school. During school, you have your regular course load of, your on-campus stuff. And then the coolest thing was from every day from 7 to 7:30 to 9 a.m., I would always go fly. So I would get up super early, leave the dorms, go to the airport, go fly, come back and do my classes on the regular basis on campus. And I got all the rest of my licenses and ratings required to be a certified flight instructor. Once I became a flight instructor, I was flying while I was in school as well. And then once I graduated, I got some flight time, and I actually went to fly rich people around. So that was actually a really fun experience. We got to fly people all throughout the Bahamas, through to New York, to Miami, to the mountains, all these different places. That was an absolutely wonderful experience. And my record for the most money, in terms of net worth that I've had on my airplane was $11 billion. I had two founders of one of the largest insurance companies on my airplane. So it was really cool to have those people on my airplane. And it was a good landing, so that was all that mattered. But after doing about a year of charter work and flying those people around, I was fortunate enough to get on with my current airline, Endeavor Air, as a first officer. And so currently I fly around for Delta Airlines, and I really enjoy that. I get to fly all around the country. In fact, just last night I was in Wisconsin. The night before that I was in North Carolina. So it's a great adventure, and you get to fly around all different places. Every time I have an overnight in Philadelphia, I text Tevin and be like, hey, can we go to Cheesesteak? If I have a Charlotte overnight, I'll annoy Chameron. So it's really, really fun to kind of get to travel and do work at the same time. So outside of flying, I try to stay involved. I recruit pilots for my airline, and I volunteer with organizations such as the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals. And I actually teach courses with students about the fundamentals of aviation and all these different things every Saturday throughout the spring and fall semesters. So I just really, really love aviation. It's a great career. And I think the best thing about aviation I'll highlight is the fact that you get to travel. So I'm originally from Colorado, but I live in New York City. I live in Brooklyn. So it's great. I can fly back and forth to see my parents, to see my friends, family, all that stuff for free. So I think that's one of the best things about being an aviation professional is you get to fly around the world for free. As Tevin and Cam can attest, we interns at major airlines. I interned at Delta Airlines. And whenever you're not working, you can fly all around the world, anywhere that Delta flies for free. So one what we did was we would work Monday through Friday during internship. This is in college. And then on Friday nights, we would look at the flight schedule, see whatever flights had open seats, and we would go. So we would go to London for 24 hours. We would go to Paris for 24 hours. So every weekend we'd fly out Friday night and fly back in Sunday night. And that was just one of the coolest experiences of my life. And I was able to visit just about 17 countries with the free flight benefits that we have here at the airlines. So that's why I love aviation. Can't get enough of it. Absolutely love it. Some of the pilots I fly with are like, how do you know so much? It's just the most fun topic ever. And any questions you have about aviation and scholarships or anything about my journey, please let me know. And I will pass it off to the next speaker, Tevin.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all the attendees for tuning in and listening to our story. My name is Tevin Williamson, and I'm a first officer with United Airlines. Just like a lot of pilots that you'll probably meet or talk with, a lot of us fell in love with aviation at a young age, so I too was growing up. Actually, my dad would play a flight simulator on the computer, and I would join in with him, and that's kind of where my interest came from. And it's funny, we always had a joke whenever we were walking around outside, we would look up at a plane and be like, I could fly that. So that kind of always just stuck with me. So I was also fortunate to have a pilot for UPS that went to the same church as me. And that's where I learned about where to do about flight training and education, and just everything I needed to know about the airlines is where I got from him, which is I was very lucky for that, because in aviation, there's not a lot of pilots. Well, I'm saying in the country, there's not a lot of pilots, so it's very helpful to have kind of insider knowledge like that. And that definitely put me at a very nice advantage to get me to where I am today. Also, my love for travel, it's definitely what pushed me towards becoming a pilot. When I was young, me and my family, we would take trips sometimes, and a lot of times, like Mark kind of said, my favorite part was the whole travel experience and just getting on the plane and just being in the air. So Mark also mentioned a organization of Black aerospace professionals. That's where I got my first flying experience. They have a camp called ACE Camp, Aviation Career Exploration. I started in that, and they taught me all about the different career choices in aviation, which isn't just limited to being a pilot. You can be a dispatcher, you can be a flight attendant, you can be on the business management side of things. But that exposure just also helped fuel my drive in order to pursue aviation as a career. So I did the ACE camp for about 2 to 3 years until I was old enough to do the solo flight academy. You had to be at least 16 years old to solo an airplane. And the camp was a 2-week process where every day we would study, we would fly, and train and build our proficiency level to be able to fly the aircraft by ourselves. And that was really my first time ever flying a plane, and it was the confirmation I needed, like, this is for me, like, this is the career that I want to do, and I could see myself doing this for a very, very long time. So that was my junior year of high school is when I did that solo flight academy. And after doing that, that just completely changed my whole perspective on things. Like, I went back to school and, I studied hard and I worked hard because I knew, like what Mark said, you gotta have good grades, you gotta have, be pretty good with just things in STEM in general. So I had a new drive under me when I went back to high school. I finished out high school. I applied to Delaware State University, to their aviation program, where I spent 4 years doing the degree. And what's nice about going to a college that has an aviation program is that you can do all your training there, and then a lot of times they'll hire you back to be a flight instructor so that you can build your flight time to join the airlines. Because to fly in the airlines, there's certain minimum flight hours that you need. And so it's nice that I was able to do my study there, still go to class, and fly as a flight instructor to build my hours towards the minimum requirements to join the airlines. After I completed the program at Delaware State University, flight instructor, got my time, I went to Republic Airways, which is a regional carrier that flies actually for United Airlines, American Airlines, and Delta Airlines. I was flying the Embraer 175, which is a 75-seat passenger jet, typically flying in and out of smaller markets, and I did that based in Philadelphia. And then after that, I'm sorry, I meant to mention also, when I was in college, something that helped prepare me was doing the internship with United Airlines. Similar to Mark, Mark did his internship with Delta Airlines. I did mine with United Airlines, and that gave me like the insider knowledge of the aviation industry, which again, it just lit a fire under me. Like after doing that and being able to travel and just seeing what kind of day-to-day things that pilots do, I knew 100% that it's exactly what I wanted to do. So after I spent my time at Republic, I applied to United Airlines and went through the interview process and everything, and thankfully got hired. And I've been with United Airlines since June of last year. Currently flying the Airbus 320 and absolutely loving it. So I really hope that if anyone's interested in aviation, the information that we give you now can really help you and point you in the right direction. And it's an awesome and super rewarding career. Now I'll pass over the mic over to Chameron if he's ready.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Chameron Chase. I'm a first officer as well for United Airlines. Just hired last month, so I'm excited to be on property there at United. I too, just like Mark and Tevin, I too started my passion for aviation at a younger age. I actually had a father who was a dispatcher, so he kind of worked on the operational side of the flight things. At the time, it was U.S. Airways. He was a dispatcher and made the flight plans and everything for the pilots there. And at a young age, I really wasn't too interested in having a career in aviation, but I just knew it was an option if I wanted to do that. But at the time, when I was going through middle school and high school, I was involved in STEM, and my goal was just to become an engineer of some sort. All I knew was I wanted to go to work dressed up in a shirt and tie and go downtown. So it wasn't until I met another church member of mine who decided to run an ACE camp, like Tevin said. It was a week-long aviation career exploration camp where he had about maybe 30 kids, all about 8th to 9th grade, and spent the whole week exploring different careers. Like I said, I'm here in Charlotte, North Carolina. We got to tour the Charlotte Air Traffic Control Tower. We got to fly some of the U.S. Airways flight simulators that the pilots were using at the time for their current training. And on the very last day, we got to take a introductory flight, which is typically a short flight, just allowing you to see what pilots do in the initial phase of training. And you'll go up in a small little propeller aircraft, and you'll take a flight and kind of fly around just the local area. And so that flight was really what sparked my actual aviation or my drive to actually pursue this career. So after that, I was like, okay, I got to figure out what I got to do to become an airline pilot. because I think this is something really, really neat. So I sat down with my mentor who ran that camp, and we developed a little plan. Ended up going through high school, and I went through the STEM program that was there in the engineering program that I was in. And I had originally planned going through the Air Force Academy. Found out I wasn't competitive enough with my GPA. So that senior year, I ended up getting a 4.0 and ended up just going to a local college that was Delaware State University, and enrolling into their aviation program. So I knew at the end of it, you get out from that college university with more ratings than others. That's what made me choose Delaware State University over others. Also, cost was a big thing. Getting into this, it's hard to find a lot of money to actually fully pay for this. Like Mark Reese said, you have to really go on a search and really apply, put yourself out there to actually find the money, because it is out there. But at the time, being a high school student, stubborn, I didn't listen to what my mother said as far as applying to scholarships. So I'm paying for it now. But anyway, while I was there at college, I ended up getting all my ratings and did the internship with United there as well. All while just really making sure I stay connected with not only my mentor who started the whole process, and he was kind of behind the scenes watching me matriculate, go through the whole college program. And if I had any questions about anything, he could connect me with other alum and help me out with any type of situations or any type of struggles that I had. I also was able to surround myself with people like Tevin Williamson, who I met in college, who also had the same passion for aviation. And that really helped propel me to where I am today. If it wasn't for Tevin, I would have never actually done that United Airlines internship, which tremendously changed my whole mental on what I actually wanted to do in aviation. So that internship was really one that kind of set me apart from others. It made me really competitive when I began to apply to other airlines, and having that experience with a major airline, which is like the pinnacle destination of like mostly pilots around the world, just to fly for a major airline like United Airlines. That really set me apart from other competition. So once I graduated from Delaware State University, I went to a smaller regional airline called Piedmont Airlines. I was based out of Charlotte, North Carolina, and I flew just a 50-seater jet in the mostly just Northeast, flying out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And from there, I flew for about 2 years as a first officer, which the first officer sitting in the right seat, kind of second in command. And I eventually upgraded to a captain, and I was a captain, upgraded in 2019, and flew for about 2 years as a captain there, building up my captain experience as a pilot in command. And from there, I was really able to learn a lot about not only myself, but how others react around you. And you really get to see what type of leadership skills you kind of get to put in place while you're working with others. Because as a captain, everyone's always asking you, hey, Cap, what's going on? What's the plan? What are we going to do? You're talking with dispatch and other different jobs and careers that all are part of the flight operation to really make one flight just get off the ground. So it really takes a collaboration of many different jobs within the aviation just to get one flight from its origin to its destination. So working as a captain was really fun. But I eventually knew that it wasn't the end. So I continued to stay in contact with a lot of people that I met through my internship experience and through college, and was able to land a job here at United Airlines. And currently outside, when I'm here at home not flying, I do try to stay in contact with other people who are actually doing like career changes. I have like two guys actually who are about 41 and 44 years old who are doing a career change. One was a professor at a local community college, and another one ran his own mental practice, psychology mental practice, and they're actually in the process of changing the careers to a pilot. So I spent a lot of time kind of tutoring them to get them their ratings, and also kind of switching that role from becoming a mentee or from turning from a mentee into a mentor. So I've also got a young guy who's just 15 years old. He's already beginning his first semester of college. At 15 years old, he's at Embry-Riddle University. He's taking classes. Super sharp kid, but I just met him. Actually, his mother was a co-worker of mine at Piedmont Airlines, and I've been mentoring him to try and get him to turn into a airline pilot as well. So I'm kind of switching that role, and it's really exciting to be on the other side of the table. Because just a few years ago, it's just like you all sitting at a panel just like this, at conferences and conventions, trying to get insight on what this industry actually is. And I think Tevin and Mark really did a good job of laying out what the aviation industry is. You know, it's not all about pilots. It's a lot of different careers. It's really every career within under one umbrella. But the biggest advice I can give to you is to really try and find a mentor. You know, reach out and stay connected with many people. A lot of people give out their business cards, or they give out contacts. Stay connected with people, because just because you don't know something, you can always ask and reach out to other people. You don't know who they know, and you don't know if who else they connect you to could be your answer. They could actually be giving you some type of employment. So networking is really key, and that's something I really took going through college and going through the internship, something I really took seriously, and it will really benefit you in the future. So like Dr. Ivy, I really thank you for having me on this board and panel, and I hope that to see a lot of future people join the aviation industry in the future, and hopefully we'll be able to actually work together someday. So that's just my story, and I'd like to pass it to, I think it's David that's next, actually. So once again, thank you again for allowing me to share my quick story.
Everybody hear me okay? Hope you can. I'm here in the beautiful Mile High City of Denver, Colorado. I apologize. I just took a flight in. So thank you so much for Dr. Karen Ivy for having me as one of your panelists. A little bit about me. It's interesting listening to all these other guys, how much we all have in common. And I hope everyone who's listening here has the same passion for aviation. And that's what it started as. Ever since I was a little kid, always wanted to be a pilot. Always knew I wanted to be a pilot. Never had any question of what I wanted to do. And it sounds like a lot of these guys are the same way, and I hope a lot of you are the same way. And networking is everything. And I learned that almost on accident. And I didn't know that until I got into high school. And I realized I don't know any pilots. I don't know how to become a pilot. Always know I wanted to do it. Always, my parents took me to the airport restaurant, and always, was around airplanes, but never really made connections with any pilots until high school. I moved here to Denver and met a guy named Willie Daniels, who's on this phone call, and he became my mentor, and learned through him about his organization, Shades of Blue, that gets kids interested and passionate about aviation careers, and gets them a mentor, and follows them and tracks them all the way till they get to United Airlines, or till they get wherever they're going, wherever their destination is. Maybe they don't want to be a pilot. Maybe you want to be an engineer. Maybe you want to be an astronaut. But aviation is something that's always intrigued me. And met Willie, got on his mailing list, went to Young Eagles flights, which are little intro flights. They're free to anyone under 18. Highly recommended if anybody's interested. From there, went to the, I'm going to take my mask off. That's okay with everybody. Went to the Wings Over the Rockies Museum, saw Willie there. And then from there, got a scholarship through an organization that many people have already mentioned, OBAP, the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals. and went to the ACE camp, went to the Solo Academy, and also got a private pilot scholarship. And that was huge because I didn't grow up with a whole lot of money. There are scholarships out there. I know they're really hard to find, but a lot of scholarships unfortunately go unused. So if I could give one piece of advice, it would be find scholarships, hunt them down, and look for them, and they're out there. So from there, I got my private through OBAP with Captain Milan. He's a now retired Delta pilot and met a lot of pilots because, like I said, networking is key. Went to Western Michigan University and finished up my ratings there. And then from there, got, as many others have said, an internship, which is huge with Southwest Airlines. And man, the internship was amazing. Always got to go on, learn how the airline works, got the travel benefits, and we would always go somewhere and had a lot of fun. That's the other thing that's kind of true with aviation. It's a lot of fun. It's a fun group of people. It attracts a fun crowd. And did the internship with Southwest, did 2 more years at college, got my bachelor's degree. And again, through knowing the right people, talked to a professor one day. It was 2010. Things were really slow in aviation. As I'm sure you know, aviation is very cyclical. And I said, hey, I'm looking for a job. I'm going to graduate soon. I got my CFI, my, instructor's license. I was in Michigan, which is kind of dark and cloudy a lot of the time, hard to build flight time. Do you know anybody? And she says, yeah, 25 years ago, I flew for this guy in Guam. Where's Guam? Oh, it's an island just south of Japan, about 1,000 miles. Oh, well, yeah, all right. Can you hook me, get me in contact with him, hook me up with him? And she did. And so the next thing you know, I'm 21 years old, going on a flight to Guam, and got a buddy pass from Bulleigh, which I'm eternally thankful for, and got my hours over there, worked over there for 9 months, and it was amazing. It's interesting going, as I'm sure many of you know, it's very expensive to become a pilot, but it's interesting going from paying money to fly to getting paid to fly. And don't tell my boss, but it's like, I get paid to do this? This is amazing. I was doing sightseeing tours around this little island in a little 4-seat Cessna, and loved it. And was still in contact with Bulleigh and still in contact with the connections I had made back in the continental U.S. And got a phone call from Commute Air, which is kind of like Piedmont and Endeavor, one of the small regional feeders for United. I was a first officer there for 2 years, upgraded to the captain's seat for 4 years, and then got hired on with United in 2017. And so I've been here just over 4 years. I'm a first officer on the Airbus 320, 319, same as Chameron, I believe, and based in Chicago. I live in Michigan. I've got a wife and 2 kids, and they are wonderful. Spend a lot of time with them. Also spend time mentoring other pilots. And another thing is I want to be Bulleigh. I want to go into classrooms. Just yesterday, I had a guy who's doing career day for a local high school say, hey, will you come and talk to us? I said, yes, I would love to come and talk to you. So that's something I'm really passionate about is I want kids to meet pilot or to know what this job is about, know it is the best job in the world, and mentor and inspire others. And when Bulleigh and Dr. Ivy asked if I would be a part of this, I was overjoyed. And that's something I really want to do more of. As I said before, aviation is very cyclical. We learned during COVID. I was going to be furloughed. So another piece of advice I could give the younger crowd is find something outside of aviation too. I have always been good at flying airplanes. That's all I've known. And then COVID happened. All of a sudden, there wasn't a need for pilots anymore. So I bought a rental house and renovated that, trying to get invested in real estate and having an income to support my family outside of aviation. But if I could say anything, yeah, connections are key, and networking is huge. And don't ever pass up a connection. People in aviation are generally really cool, and get a business card made. When I was in college, I had business cards, and I handed them out to people I met. And it was a really good way to, hey, what's your name again? Here's my business card, and try to build connections with others in aviation. And get an internship. Get your foot in the door. Keep your grades up. Keep your nose clean. That's the other thing. Don't get anything on your criminal record. And I'm not perfect. I didn't get perfect grades. But thankfully I never, if you have a drug or alcohol conviction or a problem with that, it's really hard to get hired in this business, and it can be very competitive. So yeah, I'm going to hand it back to Dr. Ivy or anyone else now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Karen Ivy, and I am so excited to introduce our additional speaker for this wonderful, wonderful event. It is my pleasure to introduce First Officer Tanisha Wallace. First Officer Tanisha Wallace became inspired to become a pilot at an early age when she was introduced to the Shades of Blue, which is a nonprofit organization founded by her uncle, retired United pilot Captain Willie Daniels. She experienced her first airplane ride while participating in one of Shades of Blue's summer programs. After that rewarding experience, Ms. Wallace set her goal to become an airline pilot. While in high school, she took electives relative to aviation and graduated with honors. After graduating high school with honors, she studied aviation science at Mount San Antonio College, graduating with an Associates of Science degree in commercial aviation. Ms. Wallace selfishly joined the U.S. Army as a chemical specialist in order to give back to her country. Her sacrifice awarded her the necessary skills pertinent to continue her journey as a pilot, as well as provide complete funding for flight training. That was an excellent way to pay for training. After she completed her military service, she enrolled into Central Texas College, where she obtained all her pilot ratings to include certified flight instructor and multi-engine flight instructor. In conjunction, she attended Texas A&M University, Central Texas, obtaining her Bachelor's of Science degree in professional pilot. After graduating college with honors, Ms. Wallace became a full-time flight instructor at Central Texas College until she acquired enough flight hours to get hired on with her first regional airline. While there, she obtained her ATP and 3 type ratings to include the CRJ 200, 700, and 900, the Embraer 145, and Embraer 175. Tanisha's journey led her to corporate aviation, where she is currently flying King Air 350i. Her experience with airlines and corporate aviation gives her the opportunity to provide mentorship to aspiring aviators. Ms. Wallace believes through hard work, determination, and sacrifice, having a flying career is rewarding. Her experience allows her to travel to multiple countries, sightseeing, learn new cultures, and of course, eat multicultural feasting while getting paid to do it. Now that is a plus. The advice of Ms. Wallace to future aviators is, no matter what roadblocks come in your way, always be persistent, stay motivated, and never lose sight of your goal. It is my pleasure to turn the mic over to Ms. Tanisha Wallace. Tanisha, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. It's really nice to be here and meeting you all. I have been a part of aviation for quite some time, and as a matter of fact, I had got involved in aviation through my uncle's program called Shades of Blue. Actually wearing his shirt right now. I don't know if you guys can all see it. So when I was a teenager, my uncle, Captain Willie Daniels, had came and talked to majority of all of us, our cousins. My mom is Willie Daniels' youngest sister, and they're a family of 10, so it's a pretty big family. He came in and talked to all of us about a future in aviation, and at the time, just being a young teenager, I didn't have any clue about aviation at all. So he had invited me to Colorado to one of his summer programs, and which I had participated in and got my first ride in a Super Cub. You know, it's a tail dragger, and it was the most amazing thing I have ever did in my life. Just having that feeling of taking off and getting exploring and seeing the mountains and stuff was just amazing. So after talking to him and getting that ride, I decided aviation was going to be my career of choice. So I went back to California, where I was originally from, and went to high school and started to take up some elective classes to help me get geared for my aviation career. Took up psychology and astronomy and all those stuff to help out. Even got my first introduction in private pilot ground school while in high school, believe it or not. Graduated with high school with honors, and then moved on to college, where I went to Mount San Antonio College to pursue my career in aviation. I got my associate's degree at Mount San Antonio College under commercial aviation. And then after that, I had to take a pause from my whole aviation career. And I decided to do something a little bit patriotic before I continued to pursue on. So what I did was join the Army as a chemical specialist. And this was a wonderful opportunity for me, being that I was so young at the time. I was only 20 years old. This opportunity for me to get into the military really was an eye-opener experience, where I was able to explore the world, get into a whole team dynamic. And it was also good for me because I needed to get a little bit of discipline in my life too. So it was such an amazing time in my life. And I was entrusted in the Army, where I was able to come out with a secret clearance and get a lot of medals of achievement. And having spent my time in the military for 5 years, I was awarded the opportunity to use my Montgomery GI Bill. And when I got out the military, I used the Montgomery GI Bill the Army provided for me and went back to school. And at this time, I went to Central Texas College in Killeen, Texas, where I had got all my ratings from private pilot, instrument, commercial, all the way up to my multi-engine CFI, CFII, and my CFI. And in conjunction, I also went to Texas A&M University to get my bachelor's degree in professional pilots. So after completing all my studies, I had became a flight instructor, where I had taught for 2.5 years up until I was able to get enough flight hours to meet the ATP standards. And then I was able to get on with a regional airline. At the time, my regional airline was called ExpressJet Airlines, and a wonderful company. Got my ATP with them, as well as got 3 type ratings out of it: the CRJ 200, 7 and 9, the Embraer 145, and then also the Embraer 170, 190, which is pretty much the 175. And was with ExpressJet for 4.5 years until, as we know, the up and coming pandemic had put the airline out of business, in which I am currently now at Wheels Up, flying a King Air 350, a wonderful company. It's on the other side of the airlines. It's now the corporate side, where I get a little bit more interaction with my passengers. And, it's a wonderful company to be with. And I like it full scale. I get the opportunity to have the airline experience and corporate experience for those who haven't quite understood which direction they want to go in. I have some feedback to give on both sides of those houses. What I like to do in the meantime, I love to go trail walking. I enjoy a game of basketball here and there, although I'm a little older, I can't participate in basketball anymore. But I also like to give back and be at programs like this where I could mentor a lot of young folks and give them my perspective and try to encourage the next generation. And it's just been an amazing experience for me.
All right, Ms. Wallace, this has been so exciting, and hearing about your background and your interest and how you got involved in the aviation industry. You were steps ahead of where several people are even today. So I'm going to ask you some questions because we know in our audience are young individuals who have the interest in going into aviation, but they just don't know how to get there, what their moves may be. And you are such a wonderful model, as well as the other great speakers on our panel today. Mm-hmm. So first of all, I'm going to ask you the question, how was the experience the first time when you were behind in the flight cabin as a pilot, your first experience? Can you walk us through that? How did that feel?
That was the most rewarding feeling ever. Being a commercial airline pilot, not many people know it's your first time actually getting out there, but to us, it's just routine. And having to go up and fly and, just do your thing that you're trained to do. It was so rewarding for me, especially when I came down, landed the airplane smoothly. And, I got a chance to open the cockpit door, and everybody, when they were exiting, oh my God, that was so wonderful. That was such a great flight. That was a smooth landing. Just the feedback from all the passengers, it was just the most rewarding thing I have ever had in my life.
That's that's exciting, because I know when I'm on flights and when it's rough up there in the air because of turbulence and all, but then it's time for us to land and all the passengers are like, okay, hold on to your seats. And when that pilot nails that landing and makes it so smoothly, I'm one now where at the end, as I'm leaving the plane, I will tell the pilot, thank you for a safe flight. And that is an experience that we as passengers really do appreciate. Definitely. Well, one of the things, Ms. Wallace, that I picked up as you were talking is education has been key throughout your life. So as you finished high school, you took different directions and venues of going to get certifications, going to get your advanced trainings and your degrees. So can you speak to the audience on the importance of keeping the focus on your education, one, and then two, once you become a pilot, do you have to continue with trainings as you advance?
Yes. I like to tell everybody in the audience that coming into aviation is very rewarding at the end, but it's going to be challenging in the beginning because it's a whole different language that you have to learn. And coming from my own struggles, what I had found out was it's better to learn the academics now instead of trying to go for getting your flight hours. Don't rush to the finish line and don't have the core at the bottom to help support you. So getting all your academics done firsthand will definitely help set the stage for later. So for those that's interested, if let's say you don't have enough funds to actually fund your training, we have so many certifications that you have to go through. You got to get your private pilot written exam out the way. So when I was a flight instructor, I told my students, study for your written exam, get that out the way, because that's 2 years that you can hold on to that ticket before it expires. And in that time, you got 2 years to get all your flight hours out the way, and then you could get it done. What I did was I flew all my, as many hours I could, and then waited to the end to study for my written exam. And it took so long for me to get my written exam done that by the time I went back flying again, I had to go back and do all those flight hours all over again, and it became costly. So if you can avoid that, do so. And then once you learn those basic academics, it's going to follow you for the rest of your career. I still have to know my weather and the cloud heights. I still have to know all that. So for us now that we are in our position, we still have to get certified every year. For captains, it's twice a year. For first officers, it's once a year. And we call that recurrent training. So we're still trained to standards, and we're still trained to know everything that we started from the beginning. So keep all that fresh in mind.
Yes, that's a very good point, because again, I can speak as a passenger. It makes me warm and cozy to know that my pilots are currently trained and currently certified, right?
Yeah.
But let me ask you this question, because I know some of our conference attendees, the question is on their mind. Can you speak to the importance of some of those topics such as math, writing, even reading? Those are basic, right? Basic elements, but are probably so important, especially going into the whole aviation industry. Can you speak to that?
Yes, because math is, we have to do a lot of math, especially when it comes to calculating our weight and balance and trying to equalize the aircraft in itself. It's very important. And having to read, when you go into new aircrafts or new companies, they're all going to have different manuals that you have to read, and you have to memorize all this stuff in order to continue in that program or even in that new aircraft. So having, good grades, A's or B's if you could get it. But just having general good grades in general is definitely going to set you apart from everybody else.
One of the things that I'm so impressed with, first of all, I know your uncle, Captain Willie Daniels, is
Yes.
In my neck of the woods. Is sort of like in the aviation industry. It's like, who doesn't know Captain Willie? He is so inspirational. He is so important to the push that he has, and several of us are going along with this push as well, as trying to get young individuals aligned in the aviation industry and taking the benefits that are there. There are organizations who are willing to pay for training, willing to hire you on, willing to move you forward into becoming a true and full-fledged pilot. So I'm going to ask the question, you have the connection of working with your uncle, Captain Willie. How important is it for individuals to find someone in the aviation industry or individuals who they can connect with as mentors? How important is that mentor and mentoring relationship? And are you in the position, I know you probably should be too, in the position of mentoring others today?
Yes, it's very important. Networking is the number one key to success in the aviation business. Just connecting with other people. I have a prime example. While going through some training, I had kind of struggled just a little bit, but I had people in my background that was there to help me on the side that I couldn't ask while in the training department. So just having a phone call away to somebody say, hey, look, I just don't understand this. Can you please help me out? And have them guide you while you're on the phone talking to them is so important. And also, it's good to have connections, because a lot of companies look for letters of recommendation. And people in good fields like myself and my uncle, who knows these connections could not only write you a letter of recommendation, but can help pass your application along and really speak word and volumes on your behalf. So it is so important to connect. And for me, yes, I am in a position where I do mentor. I do give back to my uncle's program, Shades of Blue. And I also am involved in Sisters of the Skies, nonprofit organization as well, where, you know, we go out and speak to a lot of young Black African American girls that's trying to get involved. Because for us, young Black African American girls is only less than 1% in the aviation industry, and we're trying to increase those numbers. So, yeah, it's very important.
I want to highlight on something that you just said as well, because I am just jumping out of my seat with joy in seeing you, young, intelligent, African American, and female. And one of the things that I speak to a lot, and some in our audience may be slightly concerned about this, is the whole positioning of being the only one. As you said, for African American females, the percentage is really low. For females in the aviation industry, it has grown over the years, but relatively, we still have opportunity and the need to grow also. Can you speak from your experience as being the only one? And I say that in quotes because that could have meant being the only female in your class, being the only African American in your class, being the only one at a younger age in your class. Can you speak to that positioning of being the only one and the importance of moving forward and pushing forward through those positions and those opportunities?
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, it has been challenging to be the only one and the only female in the class, and yet alone the only Black female. But we can all take a part in finding something that we could interact with. You know, I like to go to a lot of my peers and, you know, kind of get along with them as best as possible and try not to show like this colorism ordeal, but work as a team. And that's the key importance is working as a team to be able to get the job done. And in a lot of these training programs, although like for myself, I had felt like I was in this by myself, I wasn't. And that's where my other mentors had came in, where I just couldn't get that extra push from my teammates that I could call on and have a helping hand, just a phone call away. And for me, I want to tell these young ladies that are trying to get up, yes, you will have struggles, but I tell you, don't let those struggles keep you down. I mean, if you feel that you are not connecting in some sort of way while in training, please reach out to any one of us. We will all be there ready to answer any of your questions for help. You're not alone.
That's a wonderful message. Reach out. Don't be hindered for asking for help.
Yes.
And let yourself become a help to someone else as well, right?
Yep.
Yes, as you go along. One of the things, as we were recently speaking with your uncle, Captain Willie Daniels, and just knowing this in the aviation industry, the statistics as far as the future need for pilots across the airlines, across organizations is huge. We have deficits as far as individuals who are in the pipeline to become pilots, to become technicians, supporting aviation, to become engineers, supporting aviation, the fullness of it. So what message of encouragement do you want to give to those in our listening audience to encourage them to make that step into aviation?
So, you know, some people try to go out and be pilots, but you have to pass a medical exam. Now, if you can't pass that medical exam, it's okay, because there's other industries that you can get into that we desperately need. As far as aviation mechanics, we need engineers. We need aerospace sciences. We just need so many of these folks to fill that gap that's about to come in the next couple years. So if you're involved or if you're interested, there's so many opportunities. Air traffic control as well. We need so many air traffic controllers out there. So, just being a pilot is not the only thing out there, is what I like to say.
I love that, because one thing it is, every young person out there listening today, attending our conference, we, at the beginning of the conference, we spoke to the different types of jobs that are available in aviation. Do your own research. Find out what you're interested in, and then take those steps to step into it. Get the education that's needed, right? And
Yes.
step into it. It is our pleasure again, Ms. Wallace, to have individuals like you, our young millennials. You guys are our leaders of today and tomorrow. And it's our pleasure to be able to touch base with you in this virtual world and to meet you as well. I'm going to ask you, Ms. Tanisha Wallace, what are your future goals of what you want to continue to do in your career path?
Well, for me, I just want to continue moving forward in my aviation career, but I would like to not only follow in my uncle's footsteps, but I would like to just keep encouraging young adults to join the aviation field as best as possible, and just encourage to mentor and be that shining light on those who would love to do it, who don't have the drive, but need somebody to give them words of encouragement. That's what I'm looking forward to for the rest of my career.
Well, that is outstanding. And needless to say, one thing I tell the young people who I help to mentor and support, can I get your signature now? Because I know toward the future, it's going to be so much more expensive just to get close to you. But I just want to say thank you. Thank you for sharing your words of wisdom, sharing your steps that you took to get into the aviation industry and to excel as the way that you are doing. We are sitting here and just knowing we're going to see so much more of you, right, as you do your career moves in aviation and support community as well in all that you do. We are so proud of you, so proud of you.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's been an honor to be sitting here today.
I will mention as well that the University of Arizona Global Campus, we started working with your uncle, Captain Willie Daniels, and the Shades of Blue a couple of years ago. And we are looking forward to doing more initiatives just like this one and bringing in connections of individuals like yourself in the industry with our students to help to encourage, to help to grow and develop those in aviation. So if you do not mind, Ms. Wallace, we would love to tap you on your shoulder for the future and bring you in, yes, for more events. Our Women in STEM is our organization focused on developing women and others who are interested in STEM careers, and we would love to continue the connection with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm just a phone call away, so absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, Ms. Wallace. We look forward to working with you toward the future and continue to shine because you are shining brightly.
Thank you, Dr. Karen. I really appreciate it.
Now, with pleasure, I get to introduce First Officer Tanya Boulay. Tanya Boulay was born in Denver. Her father was a pilot, and she grew up with a Mooney. As a child, she spent plenty of time at the airport playing in the hangar. She joined Civil Air Patrol in junior high and remained very active throughout high school. Tanya received appointments in the U.S. Naval Academy and the U.S. Air Force Academy. She attended the U.S. Air Force Academy for 1.5 years before completing a bachelor's degree of science at Metropolitan State University of Denver. She moved to Houston, Texas to complete the rest of her flight training and found employment at Johnson Space Center as an instructor in the Space Shuttle program, where she trained astronauts and mission control personnel. During this time, she also completed her master's degree in physics at the University of Houston. Ms. Bulleigh completed additional flight training to include extensive aerobatic training, a tailwind endorsement, and seaplane rating. When the Space Shuttle program ended, she was hired by Mesa Airlines in 2008 as a first officer on the Embraer 145. Unfortunately, due to the economics of 2008, she was furloughed 3 weeks after the hire date and subsequently could not find a job with any other airline. She then flight instructed for 1 year and flew skydivers in a King Air. With endurance and persistence as her middle name, and you'll grow to understand what I mean by that, Ms. Bulleigh became a tenured professor in aviation and aerospace science and captain of the Metropolitan State University of Denver's Precision Flight team. When she decided it's time to get back in the air, she was hired as a first officer with Trans-State Airlines. Tanya is now currently a first officer with United Airlines, as well as a training lead over the flight controllers at Johnson Space Center. She also extended her education in obtaining a PhD in aviation from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. As Tanya speaks, remember the words, endurance and persistence. We are indeed in for a treat. Welcome, Ms. Bulleigh.
So my name is Tanya Boulay, and I am a pilot with United Airlines. I fly the Airbus out of Houston. I'm a first officer on the Airbus. I originally grew up in Denver, Colorado, and I became interested in aviation because I grew up around it. My father had an airplane, and I grew up with a Mooney. If anybody ever has heard of a Mooney, it's a small 4-passenger aircraft. And it's a rather small one, but it's one of the faster general aviation aircraft. And so he was a part owner in that airplane the whole time I was growing up. And so I have one younger sister, and I was basically the son that my father never had. So I was out at the airport a lot with him as a child, playing Barbies in the hangar or doing whatever. And he'd say, bring me a screwdriver. And I'm like, what's a screwdriver? And so I would hang out in the hangar with my dad. And I remember my mom's parents lived up in Wyoming, and we would fly up often to see her parents, weekend trips, week-long trips, whatever. And we would land in these small little airports up in Worland, Thermopolis, Gillette, Basin, Wyoming, that whole area. She has family throughout that whole area. And when we would land in some of these smaller airports, we'd leave the airplane there for the weekend or whatever, and tie it down on the ramp. And I specifically remember one weekend when we were up there, I must have only been 12 or 13 years old. And we went in to talk to the lady and pay for the fuel and tell her we needed fuel over the weekend. And my grandparents were right there in the car waiting to pick us up. And the lady behind the desk told my father, she said, you're going to need to move your airplane and park it over on the other side because they're coming in and they're redoing the parking lot. They're putting new asphalt down tomorrow. And so you need to move your airplane over to those tie downs on the far side. And my dad literally just tossed me the keys. And he said, Tanya, go move the airplane. And her jaw about hit the floor. I was only 12 or 13 years old, and I already knew how to start up the airplane and taxi it. And I didn't have my license at that point in time, but I did solo an airplane at the earliest age that you can at 16. And I had my private pilot certificate at 17. Which is the youngest age. In fact, I took my prom date flying my senior year. I look back on that and I think, wow, that was crazy. If I would have been his parents, I never would have let my child go flying with such an inexperienced pilot. But anyhow, it all worked out great. What did I do to prepare to get here? I've always had an interest in aviation or in space, actually. I always wanted to be an astronaut. That was actually the original goal. And so I studied hard in school, and I started researching it in junior high. And I knew that the most successful way to reach those career goals, one of the most successful ways would be through a military academy. And my dad was very much pushing me towards that. He had gone to the Air Force Academy himself and had been dismissed for health reasons. So I joined Civil Air Patrol, which I highly recommend for anybody ages 12 through 18. It's an amazing program, very low cost, and completely exposes you to aviation and, you know, military and all of these different things. In fact, my 3 kids, I had them go through Civil Air Patrol. I told them they were going to try it for at least 6 months. And if they didn't like it, they could quit after 6 months. And they all 3 of them came kicking and screaming. But by the end of the 6 months, all 3 of them loved it. And they all became cadet commanders of their squadron. They stuck with it their entire high school careers. In fact, my son learned how to fly through Civil Air Patrol, and he soloed for like, it cost me $200, way cheaper than I ever could have done on my own, way cheaper than I ever could have taught him. But anyhow, back to me. I joined Civil Air Patrol and went through this program. I already knew how to fly. My father had taught me. But I did go through the program. I also became a cadet commander, and that looked great. I got involved in sports. I was the volleyball captain, the basketball captain. Studied hard. I was not smart, but I worked hard. I worked very hard, and graduated valedictorian of my class. And I got appointments to both the U.S. Air Force Academy and also Annapolis, the Naval Academy. And I was going to go to the Naval Academy, but I changed my mind at the last second and went to the Air Force Academy because of a boy that I had met. And so I was well on my way towards my career goals. Fortunately, unfortunately, whatever you want to say, you know, life happened, and it's hard to say what would have happened. I quit the Air Force Academy in the middle of my sophomore year and married this boy that I had met and ended up having 3 children. So all of my goals, and I finished my degree, my bachelor's degree at Metropolitan State University of Denver, which is now where I also teach. I teach aviation and aerospace at that university also. So when I quit and got married and finished my degree there, you know, obviously the chances of becoming an astronaut, I figured were pretty much done. And my husband and I opened our own businesses, and I kind of walked away from aviation, to be honest, for about 15 or 20 years. I became a stay-at-home mom and ran our businesses and was busy raising our kids. And I had my private pilot's license, and that was it. And I had basically walked away from it. Well, I went through an unexpected divorce in my early 30s and decided it was time to get back into aviation. And through some friends that I met, I was able to start flying again, and slowly through general aviation, worked through all my certificates, finished my multi-engine, my commercial, my instrument in that order, and did some aerobatic flying. I got my seaplane rating. And so since I had done my multi-engine first, I had a lot of multi-engine time and got back into it, and it was great. So by the time 2008 came, I wanted to go back to the airlines. I wanted to apply for an airline job. And actually, let me back up for just a second. I'm sorry. And during that time when I was doing all that flight training, I was doing it in Houston, Texas. I had met some, like I mentioned, I had met some friends that made it easier, and I was doing general aviation training in Houston, Texas. And I just happened to be, this was not planned at all, but I happened to be in Houston, Texas, close to Johnson Space Center. And I remember one day we were driving down the road and my friends go, "There's NASA." And I go, "NASA? What's NASA doing here?" Because I was just thinking of Florida, Kennedy Space Center. And they're like, "Tanya, Houston, we have a problem." And I'm like, oh, I'd totally forgotten that there was even a space center, a NASA site in Houston. So I finished all my flight training there in Houston, and I was looking for a job. I needed to find a job, and I was looking, you know, at this point in time, I only had my bachelor's degree. I had finished my degree at Metro, and then I had finished my flight training, a lot of my flight training and my licenses, and I needed to help get a job and support myself and the kids. And I was looking for jobs like at Kroger or apartment manager or Walmart. I didn't care. I just needed a job, and I was out cleaning houses trying to make ends meet. And some of our friends out at the airport that we saw all the time that had airplanes a few hangars down, they were like, he worked for a contractor for NASA, and he was on site all the time. In fact, the contractor was Barrios Technology. And he told me his name was Sam, and he said, "Hey, Barrios just got awarded a new contract from NASA, and we're hiring like 400 or 500 people this next week for this new contract to be starting training." He goes, "You should come out. We're having a job fair on Saturday. Come out and I'll put your name in." And I'm like, okay. And I didn't think I would, you know, I didn't think I was qualified or that I would get it, but I did. I showed up, and based on his recommendation, they hired me. And the lady told me, she said, normally we require an engineering degree for this position. She goes, but based on the recommendation, we're going to count your pilot's licenses and we're going to send you back to school. Are you okay with that? And I'm like, absolutely. So they sent me back to school and helped pay for my master's degree, which was in physics. And I did that right there at the University of Houston, Clear Lake, which is right next door to Johnson Space Center. And they helped pay for that schooling. And I started working as an instructor in the space shuttle program. And I was training the astronauts and the flight controllers in communication. I was a communications instructor on the space shuttle. So, oh my gosh, talk about blessings and life coming full circle. I can't believe how close I got to my dream job for having given up on all my dreams and walked away from it. So that was pretty amazing. And I did that until 2008. And in 2007, 2008, they announced that they were retiring the space shuttle program. So I was one of the first ones out. I was one of the early ones out. And due to some personal reasons with custody with my kids and stuff, I moved back to Denver. I got out of the space shuttle program early and moved back to Denver. And to be closer, my kids were moving back to Denver and to be closer to their father. So we all moved back to Denver. And I took a job flying for Mesa Airlines. This is when I finally went back to the airline industry. However, it was 2008, and anybody familiar with aviation or the airline industry knows that our economy kind of tanked and dipped in 2008. And so all of the airlines quit hiring, and in fact, many of them started furloughing. So I had gotten hired by Mesa Airlines and was immediately furloughed, even before I had finished my training, and I couldn't get on with any other airline. So that's when I went to Metropolitan State University of Denver, where I had graduated. And by now I had completed my master's degree. I have the master's degree. And I talked to my boss, the chair of the department, and said, hey, I'm looking for work. Do you have any classes maybe that I can even teach part-time? And he said, oh my goodness, with your background in both aviation and aerospace. So he hired me immediately, full-time, tenure track. And I became a tenured professor in 7 years. I was the head coach of the university's flight team. And we competed in an organization called NIFA, which stands for National Intercollegiate Flying Association. And it's you could think of it like the NFL. It's in any organization where different sports teams compete, like the NFL or the NBA or whatever. So the 89 universities, at that time it was 89 universities throughout the United States that have aviation programs and airplanes and a flight team all get together throughout various times throughout the school year, and they actually have competitions, precision landings, message drop, all sorts of different events, and the students compete in these, and then we would fly and go to regionals and go to nationals. And one of the years that I coached, we won the coveted loaning trophy. You can that's a Google. It's public knowledge, and basically it's first place. It's the first place prize. And anyhow, did that and really enjoyed teaching. I didn't think I would, but I really enjoyed teaching, and I really enjoyed being around these excited students. And that's how I met Captain Willie Daniels, because he would bring a lot of his students and a lot of his people down to the university and use our simulators to help let these kids fly, and I would help give the tours. So that's how I met him, and it was great meeting him and all of his connections. And we knew a lot of the same people. From my background at NASA, he knows a lot of the astronauts that I had trained, and a lot of the people that went to the various Sierra Nevada and Lockheed and Boeing, and all the people that I knew that have gone out to all these various aerospace companies. From there, my kids got older, and me being a single mom, by the time 2015 rolled around, they were gone and with their friends all the time. And my youngest child was a sophomore, junior in high school. And so I decided it was time for me to start chasing my flying dream again. I had flown skydivers out of the King Air up in Longmont. I had done all sorts of different things to help continue building my flying time. I was flight instructing on the side part-time. I would ferry airplanes for a close friend here in Houston who owns a maintenance shop. And so I had flight time in over 37 different airplanes. I had flown a lot of different aircraft and different types of aircraft. And in fact, that was the hardest thing applying at United, is getting my logbook straight, because I had flown so many different types of airplanes and aircraft. So in 2015, I was hired by Trans-States Airlines. And during this time, I decided to finish my PhD. So I went back to school at Embry-Riddle and started working on my doctorate degree. My boss, I still had these dreams of applying for the astronaut corps, and I was working with some of the astronauts that I had trained, and they thought I had a chance. They thought I had a good chance with my flying. You know, I needed the PhD, but I was a teacher, and during the space shuttle program, they really pushed the whole teacher in space thing. I had trained the astronauts. So I basically rekindled that dream and decided to go back to school and work on my PhD. My boss at Metro had also highly encouraged it, because clearly the more of his staff that have doctoral degrees is good. And it meant a pay raise for me if I continued teaching there. So I was going to school on the side full-time online. I was teaching at Metro full-time. And I got hired at Trans-States Airlines flying the Embraer 145 out of St. Louis. Thankfully, I did my training during the summer. I was a June class start date and had the training done by the time school started. Thankfully, it's amazing and such a miracle that all this worked out and that I was able to juggle 2 full-time jobs. And I was only based in St. Louis until December, and then they transferred me to Denver, which made it a lot easier. But I stayed with Trans-States for about 4 years. I was a first officer for about 3.5, and then I upgraded to captain on the Embraer 145. And when I upgraded to captain, I quit my full-time teaching job and went to part-time teaching, and which is what I do now. I only teach 2 or 3 classes online every semester, and I'll continue to probably do that forever, just because I really enjoy the interaction with the students and being able to contribute. That's awesome. So I was a captain with Trans-States Airlines for about 9 months and put in my application with United and got hired with United in 2019. And we went through the training in Denver with United Airlines. And as soon as the training was complete, I got remarried that year and to a wonderful man that I'm super happy with. And as soon as the wedding was over and the training was over, we moved back to Houston, which has always been a lifelong dream. So I currently live in Houston, Texas. We've been here for 2 years now. Finished my PhD last December. I walked and graduated, which is awesome to have that behind me after 8 long years. And also an unexpected little turn of events for all of us was COVID. So I moved back here thinking I was going to fly for United Airlines, and then we all thought we were going to get furloughed. I was fairly junior. I had just been hired in 2019. So I started talking to all my friends and connections down here at NASA at Johnson Space Center again, and I got a job with them again as a training lead over the flight controllers. The shuttle program was gone, but they had an opening for a training lead over the flight controllers, the GC group, which stands for ground controllers. If you watch Apollo 13, it's one specific position in the front room that's called GC, the ground controller, and he's in charge of communication. So it's related to my past and the comm instruction that I used to do. So I got hired as a training lead over that department and basically was just in charge of their scheduling and their training and their certification. I did not teach, but I just made sure that they were scheduled I was more of an administrative lead. I was making sure that they were getting the proper training and the proper rooms with the proper instructors, and I was able to work at home. It was amazing for the past 1.5 years. United offered us some options during COVID instead of furloughing us, and one of those options was an empty line. And basically what that meant is that I never flew, they never paid me anything every month, and I had no obligation to fly unless I wanted to. And if I wanted to, I could pick up something out of open time at my own leisure on my schedule, and then I would get paid for just that one trip. So they didn't have to pay me a minimum full-time salary. It was a great thing. United was brilliant in doing that. It saved them a ton of money. They didn't have to furlough. I still got to make some extra money on the side, and it kept me current. So unlike many other airlines where these pilots weren't flying for long periods of time, then they had to cancel all the flights because their training got clogged up. They didn't have enough simulator slots to get everybody back in the simulators and get them trained. We were current the whole time. I was flying like one trip a month or one trip every 2 months and staying current, even though it wasn't a full-time schedule. And it worked out beautifully for about a year and 3 or 4 months that happened. They called us back full-time this past November and quit the empty lines, at least for the Airbus, they stopped the empty lines. And so I told my boss at NASA that I was going to have to quit, and he asked me to stay through January so that he could find a replacement, and I agreed to. So I was juggling, again, 2 full-time jobs through November, December, and January. But then I was done and just recently quit with them, finished with them again on super good terms. And now I'm back to United, flying full-time and just teaching here and there on the side, here and there, a couple classes online. So that's basically my story of how I got interested in aviation and how life intervened and how it still comes back together and still works.
You know what? I am just sitting here. I've been smiling throughout this whole thing because your story is one of holding on to what you're interested in. You knew as a child what excited you, right? And then your story, as you share it, it really shows to keep your eyes and ears open for opportunities, even if you need to make a shift. And that's what life's all about, right?
Right, absolutely. Poor decisions and all sorts of stupid stuff. Yes.
Exactly. Brings things on us. I didn't plan that, but you have to be willing to make a shift. So let me ask you a question that maybe some of the students in the audience would be interested in as well. So you held on to your interest, and as you move forward, you had those opportunities that came. How important is it to have good mentoring connections, have good networking connections as well, because I know that there are youth in our audience who are interested in getting into aviation, but they don't know how to get started. So can you speak to both of those, mentoring and networking connections, the importance?
Oh my goodness, Dr. Ivy, you nailed it on the head. Those are both so important. Mentoring and networking are, I tell this to my students in my classes, I would not be where I am today without the mentoring and without the networking. In college, I know many of our students that I'm speaking to right now are not college age, but in the college or the high school years, if there's any internships offered to you, even if they don't pay you, if they're free, do them. I did that at Metro, and that's what started me on my way. I did a free internship at Jeppesen, helping write the aviation manuals and the technical manuals. I didn't get paid a dime for it for 6 months, but it looked great on my resume. It led to my first job, and those are the people that I met that led me into my flight training and got me my job at Houston at NASA. Networking and mentoring is absolutely everything, especially in this industry, such a small industry where everybody knows everybody. And then the mentoring piece is huge. All those years that I still wanted to apply for the astronaut corps, and I had Eileen Collins mentoring me, and Steve Lindsay mentoring me, and I would have lunch with them, and to have that knowledge and to have that perspective and to have wisdom from somebody who has walked the path before and seen and knows different things and sees things from a different perspective than what you do. It's absolutely critical. It's absolutely critical to how you come across, and your perception and your image matters. And you need to meet people, and you need to network, and you need to put yourself out there and attend events.
Yes. And, even though attending the events, just like this one, right? Just like the webinar, when it's offered, come, take in. And then another thing that we usually say too, follow up. A lot of times individuals like you're identifying programs and things like that. Follow up on those, because that could be a really good connection.
Yes, absolutely.
Let me ask you a question. I just love your story again, because as a child, your dad, who was a pilot, and it was sort of like a natural walk for you to enter into pilot, to develop that interest into piloting. But I must say, several women maybe didn't have that background. And so I just know in your travels, as you've made your moves, a lot of times you were maybe the only female who is here. Can you speak to that, and then speak to the audience about that? Don't be hindered by that. In fact, just go after your goal. If you speak to
that. Yes, absolutely. There is definitely truth to what you just said there, true, about, you know, the small percentage of females still in the aviation industry. And in fact, to this day, I do not fly a trip without at least one person commenting on, oh my goodness, whether it's in the airport or somewhere, so at least one person every trip is like, oh my goodness, you're a pilot and you're a girl? I always get that comment, and it still amazes me to this day that it constantly happens. So yes, we need to get more. And yes, I was one of the lucky, blessed ones that grew up around it. And if I hadn't have, I don't know where I would be or what I would have done, because you're absolutely right. We need to get the word out, and we need to come up with better ways of advertising and encouraging females and all females, minorities, all sorts of people, that you can do this too. Everybody can do this. This is open to everybody across the board, fair. And yes, it's different. And I'm not a victim mentality at all. I've been through divorces and custody battles, and I pull myself up by the bootstraps. I am not a victim mentality. But yes, I have experienced a little bit of different treatment, a little bit, not a lot, throughout my flight training, being a female. And I'll share this. Most people are not that way. Most people are very fair. But there are a couple of people that have been easier on me because I'm a girl. And I don't like that any more than the couple of people that were harder on me because I'm a female. Either one of those frustrate me, and it should be fair. You should be treating me the same way as you're treating the person right next to me. It should be fair. We should all be treated the same way. But again, like I said, that is very rare, and not a lot of people are that way. But yes, I have encountered it. And you know, like you just said, when you do encounter it, you've just got to, you love it that much. This is an amazing job. You know you're the better person. Take the higher road, push through it, be your best self, get the best training out of it, and walk out knowing you did a great job.
That's excellent. That is excellent. Got to ask you another question, because a lot of the students may be thinking about this. So once you become a pilot, once you have your pilot licensing, is that all the exams you have to take, or are there continuous training, renewal that, yes, you have to be prepared to continue on with?
That is a great question. That is an awesome question. Unfortunately, we call our tests as pilots check rides, and we are in check rides for the rest of our lives, unfortunately. Now, at a certain point, they get a bit easier. When you get your first pilot's license, which is your private pilot's license, it lets you fly small little airplanes, usually 4 people at the most, and lets you fly around in good weather. And you think you've done the hardest part by then. You have not. And then you get perhaps your instrument rating, which lets you fly in bad weather and at night, or you can get your multi-engine added on. And so you can fly airplanes with 2 engines or more. And every time you're getting one of these new ratings or new licenses, it's just this, it's a great deal of information and knowledge and studying that you're preparing for. Once you get to an airline like I am, once you fly an airplane that weighs more than 12,500 pounds, each one of those different airplanes requires a different license. It's what we call a type rating. So if I were to switch right now from the Airbus and decide that I want to go fly to 757, 767, 787, whatever, and put my bid in for that, I could do it, but I would have to go back to Denver for another 2 or 3 months of training. go through more simulator training, ground school, and then tests on that airplane, the check rides on that airplane. Once you're, and so that would be a whole new experience for me. Yes, I know how to fly, but I don't know that airplane and those specific systems. They are very different. And then once you are certified in specific airplanes, we have to stay current, what they call current. And so we're back in the simulators every 9 months doing recurrent training. They give us all sorts, which is basically a test. And they're giving us all sorts. And of course, this is for safety for the general public. They're giving us all sorts of failures, engine failures, fires, also the things that we don't experience on a normal day-to-day basis. Thankfully, we've got to be prepared for that. And so clearly you have to do a sufficient job at handling that and perform competently to keep your job.
Well, you know, actually, that makes me smile and that makes me feel way more comfortable when I'm flying to know that my pilot actually, you know, continuously prepares, right?
Yes, yes.
Right.
They're forcing you to go through all these hard experiences.
Exactly. Well, you know what? This conversation has been wonderful. It has been inspirational. You are an inspiration. Even sharing your life moves and things like that. Oh my goodness. There will be listeners who are like, what? They're going to tune in more just because they know, oh my goodness, she went through that. And now look at what she's doing now, plus what she continued to do. Because what touched me is, you know, as you had those shifts in life, you're like, okay, but I'm going to do this. I'm going to get into that. And that's how you work life. And that's
You're
how
so
you
kind. And I minimized the drama for this. It was way worse than I talked about.
I understand. Well, you know what? I'm going to say thank you for sharing your story, sharing your route, inspiring others, which you have done so much. I'm just going to leave that last word to you. If there's one thing that you wanted to share to even more so encourage that young girl, the young guy, move forward, the older one as well, because what I like too in your story, you went through the marriage and your children were grown and you were like, I think I want to start getting back into my dream of flying again. So if there's one thing you wanted to leave everybody with, what would that be?
I think my biggest thing that I guess I would say is follow your dreams. And it's hard to do that when you don't have the knowledge, when you don't know what's out there. So do the research. We've talked about this. If you're young, if you're a teenager or in junior high or in elementary, please check out Civil Air Patrol. It is like a junior ROTC thing and even better and cheaper. And the knowledge and the opportunities that you will get out of it, the friends that you will make, the best friends that you will make are unbelievable. And the aviation opportunities, just try it. Just check it out. Find one close to you. It's one night a week. It's like going to Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts. Check it out. And with things like that, you find friends, you find mentors, you find people who can educate you and fill your mind with ideas that you didn't even know existed. And that's what's the key. And tell your friends about it. Tell people what you're thinking and what you're dreaming and what you're doing. They may make fun of you. People made fun of me in junior high when I told them I wanted to be a pilot or work at NASA. They're not making fun of me now. And I remember it.
In fact, that term, how do you like me now?
Yes.
I love it. Well, thank you. I want to thank you once again so much, and all the speakers who are part of this webinar. Thank you guys. You guys are such an inspiration. Such an inspiration.
Thank you. We've enjoyed it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mayan. I am the outgoing secretary with Women in STEM. It is a pleasure to meet everyone and see everyone today. Before we get started with our question and answer section, I want to bring Captain Willie Daniels up to the mic to share a few words. And also after Captain Daniels could all of the panelists turn on their cameras after turn on their cameras, and that would be great so that everyone can see and ask questions. Go ahead, Captain Daniels.
Hello, Maya and Mark, Tevin, Chameron, David, We have a couple other additional panelists. And so Tanisha Wallace and Tanya Gatlin, as duty calls, says, hey, we need you guys to go to work. And so they're out right now. But, I couldn't be more proud of each and every one of these young individuals who are now airline pilots roaming around the world. And as we mentioned from the standpoint, this is an opportunity like Tevin and Chameron are 20, 25, 26 years of age. They have an opportunity to earn six figures for 40 plus years. And there's not a lot of jobs out there that will pay you six figures for 1 year, but let alone 40 plus years. And that was the whole purpose of when we founded the organization Shades of Blue in 1999 initially, and we filed for our articles of incorporation. It was with the idea of taking airline pilots like myself alongside of engineers and scientists from our working environment into the classrooms K through college to make it relevant while they're learning what they're learning. But the big thing is we just did not want to go into a classroom and say, hello, I'm an airline pilot, look at me, be like me. So we created a mechanism, a tracking mechanism to get these young people in the pipeline at an early age, whereby we can mentor them on a long-term basis. We can track them all over college. And once they have the credentials that they need to have, then we can help run their resumes right into the HR departments. So we've opened up that pipeline from primary education through secondary education all the way into the workforce. Now, with that being said, I just retired back in 2020 from United Airlines after 42 years of service with United. I thought it was riding off into the sun. And the next thing I know, I felt like the Godfather. They just pulled me right back in. So right now, I currently work in our operations center at Denver International Airport for our chief pilot, Captain Rob Biddle. And I basically represent the chief pilot when they're not in the office. I represent them, representing the pilots and helping them solve whatever issues that they might have that comes up on a day-to-day basis. So I work in our operations center with all of our other managers that run the whole entire airline at United out of Denver. This is a unique opportunity for any of those young people out there that are hearing us today for you to get engaged at an early age. By the time you're 22, 23 years of age, if you got your 4-year degree and you're learning how to fly, and maybe you have gotten to the level of an airline transport certificate, it's a great opportunity for you to be 23, 24 years of age and have 40 plus years worth of service. Now, the uniqueness that's going to take place here between now and 2038, in the world, we're looking at worldwide shortages of about 804,000 airline pilots. That's a lot of opportunity for anybody that wants to become a pilot. But not only that, there's a whole host of other opportunities. Like right now, we need almost 914,000 flight attendants that will be needed by 2038, and also about 769,000 aircraft mechanics. And that's just a few of the jobs. We have dispatchers, we have managers, we have ramp personnel. We have all different types of personnel. We do food service. So it's like a huge, huge company worldwide that needs well-qualified, well-educated employees. Now, David mentioned earlier that you cannot get into this profession if you've been involved in drugs or crime or anything like that. So you have to keep yourself clean. You have to keep yourself healthy. And it's a holistic approach that you want to take a look at this, because the airlines, they will go back throughout your whole entire history to check you out to make sure that they want to put a $250, $300 million piece of equipment in your hands, carrying 300-400 lives at one time across the world safely. And so it's a lot of responsibility that you have to look at it from that standpoint. So this is a great opportunity. As I mentioned, Mark and I, we met when he was 8 years old at a event at the Wings Over the Rockies Air and Space Museum in Denver. the Tuskegee Airmen was they were showing the very first movie, the Red Tails. And so that's where I met Mark. He came up to me and said, "Excuse me, sir, are you a pilot?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he asked me about, "Can you tell me the difference between a PT-2 and a PT-7 pitot 2?" And anybody knows anything about jet engines, it's the inlet pressure on the jet engine versus the outlet pressure. And I was impressed with the mere fact that an 8-year-old kid was asking me a question like that. So Mark and I have known each other for almost 19, 20 years or more. David, we actually met at his high school up at Legacy High School. Within his teacher invited me to come in and speak at their school, Mr. Al Godman. And we still go back and forth to their school even today to speak to their students. Tevin and Chameron, we had an opportunity to meet as they were already interns with United Airlines. And so the big thing with that is, we set up a relationship. They asked if, when I was flying as a 777 captain, would I mind if they came and rode on one of my trips with me over to London, which they did. They hopped on my flight. Tevin jump seated, Chameron rode in the cabin, and we had a fantastic time. I had an enjoyable time with a lot of photos showing them all over London and places like that. Since then, they joined our organization, working with my chapter president out of the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, Dr. Valerie Thomas, who's a former famous African-American female inventor for NASA, who invented the illusion transmitter for NASA, and that we use in simulations right now all over. So Chameron and Tevin both have volunteered their time, and I'm really proud of them for giving back to the next generation, because I asked the students that if I help you, all I ask is you turn around and reach back and help someone else join where you are. So we have other individuals that you'll hear from in the coming future. Miss Tanisha Wallace, who's flying for a company called Wheels Up, and hopefully she'll be here with United very soon. Miss Tanya Gatlin, who got a last-minute trip today and had to go out and fly. Other than that, she would have been on this call this morning or this afternoon. And so it's a great opportunity. So if anyone is interested, they could feel free to check out our website at ourshadesofblue.org. Students can join our organization all over the country. We have several chapters in Los Angeles, Colorado, DC, Maryland, Virginia, Georgia, New Mexico, and we're bringing other chapters that were dormant back up and operational, like in Illinois and things like that. So this is a great opportunity for you who are interested in a rich, rewarding career to be productive members of society. And I look at it from the standpoint that not only do you benefit, but everybody involved in your sphere of influence, your family members and your friends can all benefit from that. And with that being said, I will turn it back over to Dr. Ivy. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This has been so exciting. Oh, my goodness. I am so inspired. Right now, we're going to switch the view to gallery, and we are asking if all of the panelists, including Captain Willie, can turn on your cameras. I'll turn mine off, and as Ms. Mayan actually joins us and leads us into Q&A. And also, if there are any attendees who would like an open mic, Mark Reese, I will turn your mic on. Just let me know in chat, and you will have an open mic for the Q&A. Take it away, Ms. Mayan.
Welcome back, everyone. It's nice to see your faces. So does anyone have any questions or wants to come off their mic to ask any question, any of our pilots or panelists, any questions?
Actually, I put a question in the chat. I would like to ask Captain Willie, the opportunities for women to become pilots. Are there equal opportunities for our young generation women that are coming up for graduating from school and want to apply to become a pilot?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, two of our panelists are both women, and one is flying for a company called Wheels Up. The other is flying for United Airlines as a 737 first officer. You'll see them in our follow-up videos with their own personal testimonies. And the beauty about this, the opportunity for women is great. So I would encourage a young lady, the airlines is looking at women. As a matter of fact, the president and CEO of United Airlines, Mr. Scott Kirby, back in May of last year announced about our Aviate program at United Airlines, that between now and 2030, we're going to hire almost 5,000 pilots, and half are going to be minority and women. And so that means about right now, for starters, when he made that announcement, 2,500 minority and women pilots. So I know at this point in time, they're not in the pipeline. And but if a young lady would like to become a pilot, feel free to get a hold of us, and we can, help point them in the right direction. And maybe they can be part of that United Aviate program. Well, that number, by the way, went from 5,000 to 10,000. So that gives you an idea of the demand that's really, really required. And this year alone, my goal is to put 1,000 people in the pipeline for pilots, for starters, for this year. And I might multiply that by 10 next year as we begin to fill that pipeline and get more and more people involved. Great question.
Thank you. I have another question. It states, how competitive is the aviation field when it comes to being a pilot? I know someone discussed that earlier. I can't remember the person, so I apologize because I was trying to track all of the questions. So how competitive is it for someone to become a pilot, I guess starting out and going through the process? How does that work?
Well, I'll put it like this. If you make it into a major airlines, it's like becoming a professional football player. You've reached the pinnacle of the organization. The competition right now is really, really tough and rigid, and it's very difficult to make it into the ranks as an airline pilot. However, it's not impossible. I would encourage anyone that is interested, and especially with the future need and demands that we're looking at, the field is wide open for anybody and everyone that has the aptitude, the perseverance, the stick-to-itiveness, and the dedication to achieve that goal.
I do have a question. I don't know if it was answered. My computer kind of went down, but what is there an age limit on how long you can fly, or when can you start? I know someone's discussed somebody changing careers at 40 plus. So is there a limitation once you become older, like 60, 65? I don't know.
Yes, actually, we have students that start taking pilot lessons at the age of 14 years of age. By the time they turn 16, they can get a student pilot certificate. At 17, they can get a private pilot certificate. And then by the time they're 21, if they have the hours and requirements that they need, they can get what we call a restricted ATP, restricted airline transport certificate, which will allow them an opportunity to fly for one of those commuter airlines if they go to a 4-year approved college that's been approved by the Federal Aviation Administration. And they give them a restricted ATP where they can start with 1,000 hours of flying time, and they add an additional 5, and they get an unrestricted airline transport certificate. And at the age of 23, they can get their full-fledged airline transport certificate. And if you hire on with the airlines, and it's actually mandated by the federal government, by the FAA, who has to petition to Congress to increase the age limit, but right now the age limit to work for an airline in the United States is 65 years of age. We do have other countries right now, for example, Canada and New Zealand, that have removed their age restrictions altogether. So as long as those pilots in those countries can pass a first-class medical examination, they're eligible to fly as long as they stay healthy.
Oh, wow. So there's hope for me.
Yes, it is. You know, and I would say getting an airline certificate is equivalent to becoming a medical doctor. So in terms of the amount of time that you put into it, 8, 9, 10 years to build up the hours, the certifications that you need to have, and the experience level. It's like becoming a medical doctor, because if you think about it, you'll be flying people all over the world. You're in a fluid environment, flying an aircraft around at 500, 600 miles an hour through the sky. And you're transitioning across the U.S., but across the world into other states. European states, Asian states like Japan and China, and down in Australia and places like that. So you have an opportunity. And it's like I like to tell all of the students, when I was 22 years old, coming out of college, it was like somebody reached in their pocket, pulled out a set of keys and said, "Here are your keys to the world." And I've been traveling the world ever since. Now, I retired at 65, and guess what? I'm still traveling the world. It doesn't stop.
Wow. Carrie, did you have a question?
I sure do. And we'll look at it's actually kind of maybe it's medical related, right? I know back in the day, I'm going to age myself, the Air Force, you had to have perfect 20/20 vision to be able to fly. Is that the same case for commercial aviation?
In actuality, with vision now, it has to be correctable. Air Force was 20/20, but now it has to be correctable to 20/20. So a lot of pilots are eligible to continue to fly in the military as long as the vision is correctable to 20/20.
And I'll piggyback on that one too. There's some of those myths that we kind of have to dispel about aviation. I think the two biggest one are you have to have perfect vision and that you have to be really good at math. And I like to think I'm good at math, but I'm not that good. But perfect vision, you don't have to have. So I'm wearing contacts, and basically for me to be an airline pilot, as long as I have my contacts and an extra pair, I can go fly. So essentially, I just bring a pair of glasses and my contacts, and I've actually had one time where I was coming into LaGuardia and my contacts just kept bothering me. So I went back to the bathroom, took them out, landed with my glasses on. But yeah, so as long as your vision can be correctable to 20/20. Another big one is color blindness. So some people suffer from color blindness, and that is a disqualifying factor. But if you can go and get it signed off by a doctor that the FAA approves, then you can still fly while being, some level of color blindness. Of course, not completely. But so the biggest thing with aviation is there's probably a way you're going to be able to get it done. And that is, there are people that have been in aircraft accidents, there are people that have diabetes, or all these different things that they just have to prove to the Federal Aviation Administration, I can still fly the airplane, land the airplane, and you can still be a pilot. I flew with a pilot who had diabetes, and he got it when he was 27, and he had to give the FAA 2 years of diabetes records, but he had a little insulin pump on his arm, and it just kept giving him insulin, and he proved for 2 years that he was stable, and he got to fly with me now. So it's one of those things where all those big things that we think about, pilots have to be in great shape, have to be all these different things. While, strive for those things, yes, but you can probably get it corrected with the FAA.
I have a question, but before I ask my question, is there anyone else that has any questions?
Well, I have a question related to our discussion. Are there any physical requirements that you have to have in order, it's like military, in order to qualify to be a pilot?
No real physical requirements other than being in basically good physical condition. Having, you don't have to do, like if you go into the military, you got to be able to do 50 push-ups and 20 pull-ups or something like that. Well, that's not really required by the airlines. Just as long as they can go down and pass a first-class medical certificate, which is a routine physical that we have to take as an airline pilot every 6 months. You have to be able to have a good heartbeat and your blood pressure and everything, a traditional type of that you have to pass.
I'd like to add, this is one of the few jobs where you do have to be healthy, so for you young people out there, take your health seriously. And I mean, Willie was lucky. He had 42 years in this business, but diabetes will take you out for 2 years. And we have long-term disability, but it's still not the same amount of money that I would make doing this job. And I love this job. It would be hard if I was out for long-term disability. So that's just one thing, whenever you're using, like that I do home remodeling and just flip the house this summer because you poke one eye out, or something like that. Just take care of your health and exercise regularly, but you don't have to be just take care. If you're looking into an aviation career as a pilot, try to take care of your health from a young age and keep that part of your routine going forward.
That's excellent. I do have a question to throw it in. Mark, you opened the doorway just a little bit, but we're educators, so we have to go there. The math, the science, and this is directed to each of the panelists. As you went through your trainings in school, as you went through your pilot training specifically, what particular subjects rose to the top of your list that you'd like to encourage others to be sure you're staying ahead of those particular subjects?
If I were to answer that, I would say excel in, definitely be good at math, be good at the science, all those different things, because it's going to help. When you get into being a certified flight instructor, we talk more about aerodynamics. We talk more about, the lift equation. So if you have a good, strong basis in those subjects, it's going to help you out better. But I think that's the biggest misnomer. Like really, when we're planning cross countries, when we're doing all the flight planning, at the lower levels, we have to do it, but it's usually just basic math, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. And we have a lot of flight computers to do it. And now I just tell the dispatcher what I need and they do it. So it's a lot easier. So I don't want people to think that you need to take Calculus 3 to be a pilot, because that's just not the case. So I would say, definitely excel in those subjects, know all those principles about algebra and all those different things, but it's not going to disqualify you in any means. And one story I do remember that Tevin was telling me the last time we saw each other was you also need to kind of think in an analytical way. So we have this rule in aviation called the 3-in-a-row rule. So essentially for every mile, every 1,000 feet you go, you're going to go about 3 miles, right? So Tevin was flying the River Visual in the DCA, and he was telling me that he was a little high, but he saved it because he knew that 3-to-1 rule. So if you're always thinking in your mind of like, where am I, where should I be? Am I high? Am I low? All these different things. And I just thought that was really cool that, he was able to kind of use that math in that situation and say, hey, I'm high. What do I need to do to correct it? And, nice smooth landing in DC for all the people. So good job, Ted.
And if for what Mark is talking about, a 3-to-1 rule is for every 1,000 feet that you're above the surface of the earth, the airplane, if you lost power, it would glide for 3 miles on average. And so you can use that rule of thumb. And so if you're 30,000 feet in altitude, you would look at multiplying that by 3, and you can pretty much plan on gliding for about 90 miles. And one of the things that I always like to learn, ever since I was in college, is that you learn about everything. You learn in what I call creating a bag of knowledge for yourself. And day when you learn a new word or learning something new, a new subject, you take and put that in your bag of knowledge, because we travel the world, and you, as you saw David, and he was probably sitting next to a passenger. You don't know where that passenger came from, what part of the world, what their experiences are, things like that. But they like to strike up conversations. And you'll have one day, and I'll just do a quick little story. I was having a conversation one day with a gentleman I was sitting next to, and I happened to have studied a little bit on cobalt theory, nuclear radiation and stuff like that. And I just happened to sit next to this guy who was a world foremost nuclear physicist. And we had conversations about cobalt theory and radiation and gamma rays and things like that. So put all you can in that bag of knowledge. You never know when you're going to need to pull something out of there and have a conversation with someone about any and everything.
I'm far from a brainiac. I always struggled in school until I found aviation. School was always just kind of hard for me. And, but at the same time, like we've talked about, aviation is very cyclical. So we don't know when the next downturn is going to come. Right now there's a pilot shortage, but if there's not a pilot shortage, you're competing against tens of thousands of other guys that want that job that you're trying to get. So when I interviewed at United, I was kind of surprised. They wanted my transcripts from college. And I remember being a freshman in college at 18 years old and sitting in these general education classes and thinking, this is silly. But really, I know I'm on a university webinar. Nothing is silly, and everything matters. And put make school a priority, because you will probably have to show those transcripts someday. And if it's a downturn and you're competing against tens of thousands of other perfectly qualified applicants, if that sets you above, that's huge. And seniority is everything. That's another thing. Seniority is everything. The sooner you get on with a major airline, the better, because as Willie can say, when he's at the top of the pile after 42 years at United, life is good. And that's what we're all trying to do, is get on young enough so that we have enough longevity at the airline to have a much better quality of life, get the vacation we want, get the pay we want, get the seat we want. So yeah, you don't need to be a genius, but at the same time, make education a priority and watch your GPA and try to excel in everything that you do, because like Willie says, you never know when you might need that knowledge and when that your transcripts may be required of you.
And if I could just add, I think that language courses are very important, just because in the aviation field, communication is everything. Being able to communicate efficiently and effectively is probably like 80% of the job right there. So, take those English classes seriously, learn all about how you can communicate effectively, and that'll help you out very much.
And Tevin, if I want to add, I was traveling back and forth to Japan. So when I was in college, I actually studied Japanese, and I was blown away that when I actually started flying back and forth to Japan, how that language came in handy. And you never know how it's going to be until one day you're roaming around in Narita, Japan on a holiday, and you're trying to find a Japanese doll in a glass case. and I was able to do it. I was able to find a Japanese doll in a glass case on a holiday in Tokyo. And so you can think about those type of things, whether it's Spanish or Asian or Middle Eastern or whatever languages, if you like 10 or 15 languages, all of those skills come in handy no matter where you're going in the world.
Very true. Go ahead, Jada.
Yeah, so thank you so much for sharing all those skills that are important for the aviation industry. But my question is more of, what does automation look like in aviation? Like how much of flying is automated? That's more of my question. Is how much of flying is automated?
Well, quite a bit of the flying is automated today. However, the very basics of flight, pitch, power, trim, control, the four basic principles of flight: thrust, lift, drag, and gravity. Ever since the Wright brothers first flew, it has not changed. The bottom line, automation does make our lives a little easier when we're up flying around the world and everything, especially for 14, 15 hours at a time. You don't want to be holding on to those controls for that time frame. And the airplanes is so sophisticated now. You can actually taxi into position at takeoff, and you're sitting in a 747 that weighs 875,000 pounds. You hit the throttle, the airplane will advance up to takeoff speed, up the power, and then you get your takeoff speed, you rotate and you climb up the altitude all the way to 29, 30, all the way up to maybe 40,000 feet, and you'll travel all the way across the world. And the airplane will start down at its predetermined time, and it do that 3-to-1 descent, and you'll shoot the approaches, and it will land. And the aircraft, all you have to do is hit the thrust reversers and stop the airplane halfway around the world. So it's that sophisticated. However, the bottom line is, if all of that sophistication goes away, you still need to have the basic skills that you need to have in order to fly the airplane as though you were one of those Wright brothers. So you gotta put the basics in to learn it. You know, we call that flying by the seat of the pants.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I've got one question. So on a typical day, how many hours do you actually put in? And any of the panelists can answer.
Sure, I can start with this one. I just did a trip. So we usually do 4 trips. So we'll start, so I live in New York, so I start in New York, and I'll go fly around, and then I'll come home after, 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4 day, 5 day, it kind of depends on how long. But this trip was a busy trip for me. So on the first day, I worked on duty, so not flying, but I was on duty. They could call me. I had to go in between planes for about 12 hours, and I flew about 7 hours. And the next day, 14 hours of duty, flying for about 8 hours. The next day, flew for about 6 hours, on duty for 11 hours. So that's a pretty busy kind of trip for me. So you generally show up to the airport, get the airplane ready, fly in between places. You have time to get lunch in between, stuff like that. But that's kind of how a normal one looks. But they can be as easy as get up, fly a 2-hour flight, and you're done for the day. And then you'll have your whole rest of your day. And, maybe it's a really nice place like Denver. You can go skiing, or really nice place like the Key West. That would be great. Go to the beach. Or, it could be somewhere where it's snowy and cold. We got 6 inches of snow in Madison, Wisconsin last night. So you're just going to stay in the hotel. So it kind of depends.
And also, it's regulated by the FAA that the maximum you can fly in a day is 8 hours in one day, unless you're flying an international flight where you have what we call an augmented crew, where you have more than just 2 pilots. If you're going, say, down anything up to 8 hours is 2 pilots, over 8 hours up to 12 hours is 3 pilots, and anything over 12 hours of flying time, it's 4 pilots. So the flight time can vary depending on where you're going, but it's all mandated by the Federal Aviation Administration.
Does anyone else have any questions that they want to ask?
We have one in the chat that just came in.
Okay, I see it. Kendra asks, are you paid on duty or actual flying hours, or is it salary based?
Well, you're actually paid by hourly rate, and the hourly rate, I would say, ranges depending on the airline that you're with. If you're flying for one of the commuters, and our computer pilots can tell you what their hourly rates are. I would say after 35, 40 years of flying time, you're probably looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $300,000 to $400,000 a year earning. But they start anywhere from about 75, 80,000 a year. And like I said, with 30, 40 years under your belt, when you reach the top levels, you're well into the bigger range.
And then just to clarify with her question, we are paid for the actual flying hours, not the duty. However, when you're out on a trip and you're at an overnight or anything, you do accrue per diem as well for your meals and for drinks and whatever other little expenses that you could occur while you're out on a trip. So yes, it is on actual flying hours. But then also, if I add, there's a minimum that you'll get paid. So if I were to fly a 2-hour day, in our contract, it has it where I would get paid 5 hours because that's our minimum. So it also depends on what your airline, what's in their contract, what your minimum day pay is. And then obviously if I go over that minimum day pay, I would make what I did. So if I did 7 hours, I would make 7 hours as opposed to the 5 hours.
Thank you. So it seems like we're almost coming to a close. So I want to ask our panelists if they want to add anything or leave our attendees with any advice, because you've given us so much, but I do want to give you time to speak.
I just want to close with, if you are interested in flying, do some research on local flight schools and see if they offer what's called a discovery flight. Some places do it for free. Others might give you a very discounted rate, because normally when you do flying like that, you pay by the hour for fuel, instructor, and the aircraft. But some places will, if you're interested in becoming a pilot and doing flight training with them, they'll give you this discovery flight. Well, you'll just go up for maybe 30 minutes to an hour. They'll let you try out the flight controls and teach you little things here and there. And then a lot of people from there know immediately if they want to be a pilot or not, just based off of that 30-minute to an hour exposure. So I highly recommend, if you are interested in it, look at your local flight school and see if they have a discovery flight.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd also, first of all, don't forget about Shades of Blue as a resource organization. We as pilots, a lot of times we're traveling across the world, and if something goes wrong on the airplane, we have to call our Network Operations Center, which is our world headquarters back in Chicago as airline pilots for United. And I could be out over the middle of the Pacific Ocean if something happened. I say if I lost an engine for example, and I had to handle some emergency situations. So we have to rely on our resources that otherwise may not be in the cockpit. And these might be resources halfway across the world: our Network Operations Center, air traffic control. We have to have radio operators that we sometimes have to communicate on HF, on high frequencies and things like that. So all of the resources that you have to take into consideration, those go in that bag of knowledge that I was referring to. So it's important that you understand that Shades of Blue is a resource organization that will feed them information that they need to have, what path they need to be on in order to achieve the goals that they're hoping to achieve. And I will close with this: no matter what it is you want to do, if you want to be an airline pilot, you want to be an engineer, a scientist, a flight attendant or a mechanic or air traffic controller, go after it. Don't stop until you achieve whatever your goal is. And once you achieve it, then you'll sit back and I think it was Mark that said, hey, and David, not every one of them will agree. Wow, they pay me to do this. Don't tell them, but I think it was David that mentioned, don't tell my boss that I would do this. They pay me to do this, and most of us as pilots say, wow, they actually pay me to fly people around the world, and I got a room with a panoramic view of the world. It doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, sorry, David.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, the only thing I would add is I would say that if you do want to pursue aviation or, really anything, I would remember that you're your own best advocate. And sometimes you're going to lose focus, things of like that nature. But I actually like using things like this, like the phone, because on Instagram, it's great. Instagram has all the stuff that we have, but are also pilots on there that are posting like, hey, I'm doing a trip today, or hey, I'm flying a 747. All those things can kind of keep you engaged in aviation. So maybe you haven't gotten your license yet, but you get on Instagram and you see, hey, there's this person flying around the world, or all these different things. So YouTube videos, there are tons of great aviation YouTubers that are doing air traffic control. They're flying their own planes around. They've got all the cameras in the cockpit. So all those things can kind of keep you engaged, even if you're not a pilot yet, or you're not to where you want to be yet, or what, all those things. There's a lot of flight training. There's a lot of studying. That kind of keeps you motivated. So I would say, be your own best advocate. If you need something, always speak up. If you come to a seminar like this, make sure that you get a business card. Make sure that you connect with us. Tevin and I have given out our email addresses if you'd like to ask any questions. I've got a scholarship spreadsheet if you need it. Just be that person, be that sponge of information. And, it's going to take a little bit to get to the cockpit, but when you do, it's the best job ever. I can't believe they paid me to do it. And even yesterday I got delayed into a day off, and it was easy. I actually got rerouted through DC, got to see my sister on her birthday. So it's just the best job ever. Traveling is awesome.
I was just thinking, when did I meet Willie? And it's hard to believe it was 17 years ago. It just feels like yesterday. But one thing that Willie said the first time I met him that stuck with me is, and I don't know if you still use this illustration, Willie, but a flight plan for life. Whatever you guys want to do, we would never go flying without knowing our fuel load, without knowing our destination, without knowing our route. And if you want to be a doctor, if you want to be a musician, if you want to be whatever, find people that are at your destination and figure out how did they get there? What was their plan that they took? What were the hazards? What are the threats to my plan that might throw me off course? And stick to your plan, stick to your flight plan. And sometimes, like Willie will tell you, we hit weather, or we hit, things that don't go as planned, but we have to deviate around them and get back on course. And the same thing with your career, with your goals. Where am I? Where do I want to be? How am I going to get there? And what are the threats that are hindering me from that? So you can use that for everything in life. I want to hit a weight loss goal. How am I going to do that? I want to hit a career goal. I want to hit a financial goal. I want to, any goal, have a plan and stick to it. And it may not go as planned, but at least you have a plan. Because I think Willie said, people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. So that was something that stuck with me 17 years ago. And I encourage others to do it. People that I mentor, I steal some of Willie's material. I assume that's okay.
David, I still use that every day, and even to the day, tell the students about having that, because it's important that they plan their future out. If you come up with an idea that, hey, I want to do something, but you never take time to plan for it, chances of you succeeding are not very good. But if you plan it out and you're not planning to fail, you're planning for success, you'll most likely achieve whatever your goals are. That's great. I'm glad you remember that.
Did anyone else want to add anything before I turn it over to Miss Lisa?
I just wanted to say once again, our panelists, you guys are awesome. You are so wonderful and inspirational. I'm going to ask Chameron to open his mic one more time and give us a little closing statement as well. And then thanking each one of you as well for joining us today.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Ivy. I was trying to sneak in there and answer some questions, but a lot of you guys answered them better than I could have, so I just let you go ahead and do it. But no, just my last closing statement. Everybody's got like a dream or something that they're going to build themselves, and it's really up to you to really develop that path to whatever type of life that you want to live and the direction that you want to go. It's really going to be ultimately up to you. You're going to have to put the work in yourself. You're going to have to find people to surround yourself to actually foster that dream, or, actually destroy that dream as well. So it's really up to you to really build that dream that you want to fulfill. And I know everything was kind of mentioned mostly around piloting, but the aviation world is so broad and vast as far as careers. a lot of people now are into gaming and VR and stuff. A lot of people they love video games. Well, software engineers. I mean, there's a bunch of different careers that go with aviation. I mean, there are people that have to build these simulators that we have to train in, and companies are paying $20,000 just to send one person to train in one airplane. So we got to have people to build these things, and that's just one example of an alternate career within aviation too. But Dr. Ivy, I just want to thank you and thank everybody else that was on the panel for giving such great information today. Feel free, I'll put my contact in here. Feel free, anybody can reach out anytime. If I don't answer the phone call, just leave a voicemail, probably fine. I'll get back to you. But definitely reach out anytime. And once again, thank you so much for this opportunity.
I want to thank all of you for coming, as well as the panelists for presenting to us today. And next, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa.
Thank you, Mayan. And let me just tell all the panelists, you have been inspirational, and you remind me of the quote, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And just listening to your stories, you all don't work because you love what you do and you exude it when you're talking about it. And a lot of people don't find that, and they can go their whole lives and not find that. But you all have found what you love and you love doing it. And so you are just inspirational to everyone, and those that will view this that may not have even considered an aviation path may start to think about it. So I just thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to share your story with us and encourage us. How do you even top an event like this? We don't know, but hey, we're just going to keep on trying, and, and hopefully we can have more Captain Willie and his crew to come back to share with us. We would love to have you all. And so on that note, we will see you next month as we have another exciting webinar on the STEM industry. So I encourage everyone to pursue your dreams, and I hope you stay safe, and I hope you have a great weekend. Until March, we'll see you then.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.